and welcome to a fresh new episode of Geopolitics with Swasti, where our consulting editor and strategic affairs expert Swasti Rao answers your questions, dear subscribers, on geopolitical developments around the world. Before we begin, I would like to give a disclaimer. When you send your questions, please do not send them on Twitter, LinkedIn, and on different social media platforms. Every week, starting Monday to Thursday, we put out a tweet with a link where you can send your questions, and we will take all your questions accordingly. Now, Swasti, as always, before we begin, we have a lot of questions on diverse topics from military equipment to Macron to Trump and coming back to South Asia on Bangladesh.
Okay.
I would like to begin with our subscriber Indranuj's question, who has a very heartfelt question, I would say, and he says, "Hi, please tell us if it is genuinely possible to build a jet engine by India on its own."
That's a very good question, and it really is the trending hashtag also right now, which is that fund Kaveri. Now, to your question, the short answer is no. It is not possible for India to develop its own engine if you consider time as a vector. If you think time is not a vector and you can continue developing it until eternity, of course you can. So these are the ways to answer your question, and now I will try to just give you certain explanations of why I say so. Now, it is an important question because the success of our Tejas program, the Tejas Mark 1, Mark 1 to ban gaya, but Mark 1A, then Mark 2, and also our AMCAs, which are our advanced medium combat aircrafts, all of this actually hinges on the ability of whether we can field an engine that can perform well or not. Because what we have also realized is that so far we have tied all these aircrafts to engines coming from GE. And there are delays. And those delays are not because the American deep state is behind us. Those delays are genuine delays because there are backlogs to clear. In some situations there are other reasons, some other operational difficulties, etc. But whatever the case, it has highlighted that we are dependent on foreign supplies. So, considering our worsening security situation back home in the neighborhood, when we look at to our east and to our west, we realize that we have to not only develop very quickly our own fighter jet program, the 4.5 generation as well as the 5th generation, but also make sure that engines for those fighters are able to come without much interference. And that is the relevance of your question. So, now the thing is that what you need to know is that what India has done is that India has been trying to develop its own engine, which is called Kaveri. And across different platforms, for the worldview and also for GPS earlier, I have discussed where the Kaveri engine is. And in fact, very recently there is an opinion piece published for the print by Group Captain Ajay Alawat, which is exactly on this topic. So I recommend you go and read that piece because he's a veteran himself, he's a fighter pilot himself. So if you read that piece, you will get all the nuances of where that program is, what the difficulties are. But very quickly, I'll just give you an update and then I'll wrap up, which is that, see, Kaveri, as of now, we first tested it in 2004, when we tested it for first high altitude flying, and that test happened in Russia and it failed. Okay. And after that, when we realized that there are certain deficiencies, we decided in 2005 that we will go for GE 404 engines, etc. And on a different track, we went on developing Kaveri, thinking that things will change and there will be progress, etc. And for that, we took the help from France. And France, we took their help. But in 2013, even that project was shelved because there was some problem with respect to TOT issues, because our thing is that we want everything and we want the TOT as well, and the French are very stringent on that. Now, very quickly, before that, in 2008, there was a realization that Kaveri engine is not going to help our Tejas programs or our fighter jet program, and then these two were delinked. And whatever we developed in terms of the Kaveri engine was found to be good enough for our Ghatak drones, which is a UAV. So now you understand. So although the initial point was to develop an engine for an aircraft, but whatever we tried was only good enough for the Ghatak drone or the Ghatak UAV. So that was found suitable for the Ghatak drone, and that variant is called the dry Kaveri. I mean, it's a particular, type of an engine. And on the other side, yes, you can argue that there have been certain progress that has been made, but even then, it is not good enough to be fitted into the aircraft, because
Right.
for a fifth generation aircraft, you need engines that have to have the capacity or the power to have at least 100 to 120 kilonewton thrust. Okay, not less than that. So whatever we have now, even in the best case scenario, this is about 80 or 85
Hmm.
so this is not going to really solve our problem, and we will have to go in for some kind of a collaboration. I think the most important and the most logical thing to do right now is to zero in on a particular supplier, somebody that has the technology, of course, right now. And also, let me just tell you that very few countries in the world actually have an engine technology. So Russia has it, France has it, UK has it, and United States has it. Okay, India has it, but I just told you what India has done. And there are similarly other players in the world that also have some technology, but what we require is only for these partners. And
Right.
out of these, I think right now, I don't think Americans are a reliable partner, especially under Donald Trump, and generally also because a lot of their aid comes with a lot of strings attached. So UK also has Rolls Royce, with whom we have very deep ties actually. But I mean, over the last few years, we have seen that their R&D and investment has not been very satisfactory either. Russia has its own problems, and the biggest problem is the war in Ukraine, and Russia is dependent on China.
Right.
So I think we are only left basically with France, that we can call a reliable partner, even though it is extremely expensive. So we need to work out these things. But to your question, is that can India develop it on its own? Again, just I'm connecting the dots that no, and the sooner we understand, the better, because even though we require an indigenous one, we will require the collaboration from somebody to help us develop it, because whatever we have in terms of Kaveri, I think it has reached a saturation point, and this particular Kaveri engine cannot be improved further. So either you go for something called a Kaveri 2.0 if you really are in love with the name, I mean the brand. It happens, right? You develop an emotional attachment and a national identity to that, or you call it a completely different indigenous engine. But whatever that may be, we have to be quick in terms of deciding who we want to take it forward with. And I personally think France here is
The best bet.
the best possible of the lot. But ultimately, this is a political decision that will be taken in consultation with a lot of military experts. And just the last thing and reminder, read that article that I told you, and you will just understand all of this really better.
Before we move on to the next question, at the outset, I would like to say that this segment is a segment where Swasti takes your questions. And Swasti, the next question is actually from a non subscriber, but I decided to take it because I thought it's a very important question, and it's a very good question. And I would also encourage the person who is short for future and is a great fan of GPS to take a subscription so that we can take your other questions. But for now, Swasti, he has three questions that I will take in quick succession. And the first one is, he asks if anti stealth radars like the one Alpha Design is building are successful, and does that make stealth aircrafts like F 35 overhyped? So, his question essentially is, do you think we are entering a post stealth era?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And yes, please do consider becoming a subscriber so that your questions can be taken more frequently. Now, very quickly about the radars and about the anti stealth radars. See, the logic is very simple. Basically, stealth means something which is difficult to detect, right?
Right.
And you still have to detect if you're fighting a war. So basically, the simple answer to this is that yes, we are developing a lot of technologies so that we are able to detect and track very fast moving objects as well. And of course, what makes one of the things that actually gives stealth its stealthy features, is the speed at which it moves.
Right.
Now VHF ka full form hota hai very high frequency. Now very high frequency radars allows you to detect targets that typically evade the conventional high frequency radar systems. And here I mentioned a word called frequency. So there are basically two things, frequency and wavelengths, right? So and these are inversely proportional. So if frequency is higher, wavelength will be shorter. If wavelength is higher, frequency will be shorter.
Right.
And then long and short is that there are many properties of the radars are actually many parameters of the radars are actually are derived from these frequency and wavelengths, etc., etc., in terms of what will be its range, what will be its bandwidth, what will be its penetration, etc. Now, the thing with the VHF radar is, because I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, I am definitely not a radar engineer, but for sure I can connect it to the bigger strategic picture.
Right.
And the bigger strategic picture is that, please understand that no radar is perfect. Okay, all radars have certain weaknesses. And also, if you remember, Devdatta, in the last episode, I gave a very comprehensive overview
Absolutely,
of
yes.
how you need a combination of different kinds of radars, right? So VHF is one kind of radar. The other kind of radar in the last segment we discussed was the OTH, the over the
Right, over
horizon
the
radar.
horizon.
So now what you have to understand is that VHF is good for detecting a flying object, which is a stealthy flying object. But VHF also has a weakness, which means that it is not very good at tracking it.
Right.
And if you remember, the basics of that air warfare, if you remember, that I've been saying repeatedly for the last many episodes, has been what? Has been search, see,
The
identify,
5 things.
track, and destroy.
Yes.
So what you have here is the ability to detect, but not the ability to track. And if you don't have the ability to track, obviously you will not be able to destroy it. And that is why you need different kinds of radars. So VHF, of course, is one. We are developing it. In fact, I think the one which is called Surya, which is also in the news recently, which is being developed by DRDO. Similarly, others are also trying to develop these radars. They are all useful, but they alone will not be able
Enough.
to tackle what you wish to be tackled, which means
Right.
that they alone are not going to take down the stealth aircraft and those hypersonic missiles. For that, it is better to use different radars depending upon what exactly is your objective. So if you get the gist of what I'm trying to say, that all radars have their weaknesses, and even though they can help in detection, but tracking becomes a problem. And the other problem with the VHF so far is that they also get jammed more easily. So one kind of radar is not going to solve your problem. You need to have a combination. But just one example I need to give, which is a very interesting example that I came through when I was actually doing research for this particular question, was that there indeed is a case, and the famous one, that one stealth aircraft actually got shot down over Serbia, where a VHF radar was instrumental in tracking it. And the story goes that, in March of 1999, when NATO was bombing Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, and the Yugoslav army unit shot down a US stealth fighter, and the name of that fighter is Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk. And this particular fighter was shot down by Pechora systems. It's a very old Soviet systems, after getting tracked by a VHF radar. And those were early generation VHF radars. So I understand where this question is coming from. But in today's times, because the stealth technology is also developing very fast, and I always use a metaphor, I tell you that this is a game of cat and mouse. Okay.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
as the stealth technology is developing, the radar technologies are developing. And India has, of course, one, but to say that alone is going to solve the problem 100%, no, that's not the case at all. It's a work in progress.
Swasti, his second question is on missile systems, and he has said that India recently showcased the Rudram series and the Pralay missile systems. According to him, is this signaling a shift towards preemptive fast strike doctrines?
Okay, interesting. So Rudram and Pralay. क्या है पहले आप समझ ले. Rudram and Pralay are both developed by DRDO. Rudram is an air to surface missile. Okay, and they can play different roles, various roles. They have quite good ranges, quite good capabilities, and because there are air to surface, which means they are going to be launched from an aircraft. Okay.
Right.
On the contrary, Pralay is a short range missile. Again, it is developed by DRDO, but it is a surface to surface missile, which means that it is going to be launched from a surface. So पहले तो ये difference हो गया. One is an air
Air to
launch, one is
surface,
a surface to surface. The essential point that one has to remember here is that there is a concept of standoff ranges. Why is he asking that question, right? Both Rudram, in fact, Rudram is a group of many missiles. So there is a particular class, the Rudram 4 and Pralay missiles are considered to be standoff weapons. Okay. Which means, so the question then is, what is a standoff weapon? And if there is a standoff weapon, are there also stand-in weapons, right? A standoff strike in a military context refers to an attack where the attacking forces engage the target, of your enemy target from a safe distance using long-range weapons like missiles or drones. Now, by definition, you can understand that this is completely different from a stand-in strike where you're actually crossing the LOC and going into this enemy's airspace and doing that dogfighting and etc. Okay,
Right.
so stand-off means that you are still in the safety of your air defenses and you are launching a long-range missiles because you know where the target is, etc. So it's non-contact in that sense, and that is why these kind of missiles become important. Precision strikes become important. Drones become so important, etc. Right. So if you have the ability, let's, for example, in the case of India and Pakistan, so if we have the ability to deliver the weapon or whichever weapon system we have in the range which can exceed 100 kilometers, then we don't need to cross the border.
Right.
And this kind of a standoff ranges are extremely potent and relevant when we want to save the lives of the pilots. Right. So we don't have to cross the LOC and we can use these missiles.
It's
In fact,
non-contact.
in fact, that is also the concept of the beyond visual range missiles,
Hmm.
right? That's the same thing, that you don't really cross it, but you have these long range missiles by which you, deliver the weapons. So this is an option. We do see that in the case of India and Pakistan, we did. Try this option. Also, not just India and Pakistan, also if you look across the world, in the case of Israel and Gaza, even when Gaza doesn't have any formidable air defenses or so, but a lot of strikes which are done by Israelis are all actually standoff ranges, like that. So that is, I would say that it's not really a norm or something, but it is becoming a preferred option because you are still in the your own zone. And then of course, as you can see that, if you look at the in the case of Russia and Ukraine, the way the drones etc have been becoming more and more formidable, it just makes more sense for countries to not really send their pilots across the border and things like that. So I think to your answer, yes, India is has been using these weapons and these capabilities. And why? Because standoff ranges, they do have an advantage. So that looks like the future of warfare in many ways, a preferred option. Yes, of course.
And Swasti, following up on that, his final question is, where does India stand in terms of space based missile tracking and integrating satellite intelligence into active air defense?
Now, yes, this is a very relevant question, and it's become very important, especially in the aftermath
Post
of post
Operation
Sindoor,
Sindoor.
etc., when we realize that Chinese satellites are really helping Pakistan track a kind of a real time, movement of our side, etc. Now, very quickly, does India have satellites and are they connected to our defense network? Oh, yes. Yes, of course. So, the exact specifications for this topic are not really in the public domain for understandable reasons because, of
Right.
course, they are quite sensitive. And even if you were to speak to domain experts, they will only tell you, as much. But I think what we need to underscore and understand here better is that there is no way we are even close to China, because China is, having more than 1,000 satellites in space. And out of those thousands, a good 300, 350 are for military use only. And then it's not just military use, they are also quite formidable in terms of capabilities because they have infrared options, they have electronic options, they have various kinds of options with which they look at whatever they wish to track. And of course, India is their area of interest,
Right.
right? And when they say India, of course, all of it goes hand in hand, which is that then they are sharing that knowledge with Pakistan,
Of
etc.
course.
So, are we making progress? Yes, we are. But there is no doubt about the fact that we need to do more. In fact, if you remember, on the day of Operation Sindoor, there was a news that had come up that India has now decided to launch about 50 or 52 spy satellites. And this is something that we should have frankly done many decades ago, but we haven't. So anyway, I mean, jab jago tabi savera, but I think that a lot of things are being developed, and advanced communication satellites are being developed, and especially by ISRO. There's one that I've noted down here, which is called GSAT 7A, which is being developed especially for the Indian Air Force. And these satellites can be then integrated with our IACC-S, which is the Integrated Air Command and
Hmm.
Control System. And all of this will help us to create a real-time recognized air situation picture. Basically, the idea is, that you have a situational awareness, okay? That's what they help So when you do it in the sea, it's called maritime domain awareness. When you do it in the space, it's called a space situational awareness, and that's what satellites are used for. So all these are going to help us get more precise, real-time recognized air situation pictures, which will eventually help us, militarily speaking.
Right.
So this is what we are developing, and we will have to wait for more details to come out because the nature is quite sensitive. So these
Absolutely.
are the details which are there in the public domain, and that's what I'm telling you.
So, Swasti, a lot of questions on military, tech, missiles. Moving on from that towards a more geopolitical bent. Anubhav Saxena from Bangalore has this question that currently the whole world seems to be escorting Vietnam, and now even the French President Macron is visiting. His question is, what is so appealing about Vietnam now that the world is coming running after it, and why does India not get the same kind of importance?
Now, that's a great question, and I think the question has two parts. One is about the overall relevance of Vietnam, especially for so many Western partners, and then why is India not doing enough? So, let me answer the second part first, and then we get to the longer one. Now, to the second part, it is true that a Singaporean think tank has actually come out with a report which has assessed the impact of India's political, economic, social, military, impact on Southeast Asian countries, and in fact it says very clearly that even though India has immense geocultural heft in that region in terms of philosophy, in terms of culture, etc., but India remains disengaged from Southeast Asia, and this was a point which was discussed at length during this worldview episode that I did with Kishore Mehbubani. Okay, so he actually alluded to it, and then we landed up discussing more. So India needs to get its game up. There is no doubt about it, and this is on the one hand, of course, we are selling brahmos and this and that, but if you compare to where we are with respect to where China is, of course, I mean, the stark reality gets even starker. Now coming to why everybody is quoting Vietnam. Now, when it comes to, if I'm sure you're referring to Macron, because Macron is on a Southeast Asia tour. In fact, just on Friday, Macron has given this wonderful address at the Shangri-La Dialogue, and this year's Shangri-La is important because our own CDS, General Anil Chauhan, is going there to also speak on something, and basically probably update everybody with India's strategic and military picture. But in terms of Macron, I think Macron has done a very smart thing, because what Macron has done is that Macron has completely utilized the instability perpetrated by Donald Trump in the White House.
Absolutely.
See, very quickly, couple of things you need to know about France. France is the only European power that has people and territory and EEZ in the Indian Ocean region.
Right.
So France is a resident Indo-Pacific power. Other Europeans, say Germany has interest in Indo-Pacific, they are not a resident Indo-Pacific power. France has 1.5 million citizens, that are French citizens that still vote, okay, that live in these territories. France has EEZ. France has, of course, territory. And, you may have heard of the Mayotte Island, you may have heard of the Reunion Island, so on and so forth. So France has, and all these are, the colonial legacies, etc. So France is a resident power in the Indo-Pacific region, and that is why France also maintains a permanent presence in the Indo-Pacific region, and especially in the Indian Ocean region, because Indo-Pacific is too vast. Indian Ocean is a sub-theater of that region. Traditionally, France's engagement of this region or the Indian Ocean has been to the western side of Indian Ocean. Okay, but in 2019 or 2020, when the French came up with their Indo-Pacific strategy, they started to engage more and more with the eastern side of the Indo-Pacific as well, or the eastern side of Indian Ocean region, which is where the Southeast Asian region is.
Right.
Now, the French are aware of their limitations. They have published a lot of documents, a lot of reports, which are written by their naval officers, that of course are my colleagues also, at one point of time. So I know them very well. We have discussed it a lot. And they said that, see, France is aware of its limitations. It doesn't bring the kind of money that China can bring, or the military capabilities that United States can bring. So France can give a third way forward. And that third way forward is rooted in France's strategic autonomy. Right. I think it's a very nice formula to use anywhere France wants. But what I'm saying is that this primer was important to help you understand why Macron has come to Southeast Asia. Absolutely. So Macron's visit to Southeast Asia is not a one-off visit. It is a continuation of France's policy on the Indo-Pacific region, for the Indo-Pacific region, particularly as it makes this little transition from the western side of the Indian Ocean theater to the eastern side of the Indian Ocean theater. Now, the other thing, what exactly has Macron done? Now, around this time, this has been the most brilliant thing that anybody could have done, because Donald Trump has literally made the world a very unstable place. Okay. And in this growing contestation between China and the US, Macron has offered himself, and along with himself, also the EU, okay, as the reliable, consistent, stable partner. And not just that, if you look at the takeaways of his visit, you will also get convinced कि ये काम भी कर गया, right? It is not just at the level of rhetoric, it has also worked. So, for example, first he started off with Vietnam, and Vietnam is a former French colony, by the way.
Yes.
In Vietnam, he announced deals worth of $10 billion. $10 billion, right? From there, of course, he talked about a lot of things, but I'm just saying that he started from Vietnam, which is a former French colony. As United States is retreating into its own MAGA, whatever, simulation, China is also, they are involved in the trade wars. China is getting belligerent. Macron comes forward and says that, okay, I give you $10 billion worth of deals, which is a win-win.
That's a huge amount.
Yes, of course, that's a huge amount. And then, of course, he's a charmer. He knows how to talk. He knows how to convince. So he just, talked about how there is an imbalance, etc., and how France is going to sort of lead this way forward. And then he went to Indonesia. And Indonesia, of course, was not really an erstwhile French colony, but since 2019, which is the time when the French Indo-Pacific strategy came, their defense ties have been developing. And Indonesia has ordered 42 Rafales. And this also puts to rest a lot of conspiracy theories about Rafales not doing well, Dassault Aviation's share not doing well, nothing like that. And not just that, Rafales, of course, is the big ticket announcement. Apart from that, Indonesia has also purchased 2 Scorpene class submarines, and India also has Scorpene class submarines. Okay, so 2 Scorpene class submarines and 13 ground control interception radars. So, all in all, the package that Mr. Macron has been able to sell to Indonesia is valued at about $20 billion. Okay, so 10 billion in Vietnam, 20 billion in Indonesia, and then he went to Singapore, where he has also announced a few things, but not necessarily very defense oriented. So I think now you get the gist of why Southeast Asia is definitely important, but all the countries that are quoting these small Southeast Asian, partners are actually now in an ideal situation to make the most of Trump's instability,
right,
and America's retreat, and America's, disdain to really be the security provider, and China's belligerence. So this is something which I think is a masterstroke for Emmanuel Macron. His language was on point, his body language was on point, all the deals that he has struck has been on point, and now he's at Shangri-La, and now he's, talking about how this is the success of France's strategic autonomy and third way forward, and, reducing the great power contestation. So there is a reason why Emmanuel Macron is able to pull off all these stunts, because had it been for anybody else, it's only Emmanuel Macron that still continues as president despite his rival getting more votes than him, which is Marine Le Pen.
right.
So there is a reason he has a very sharp geopolitical, geostrategic acumen, and the results are for you to see. So he has been able to pull that off.
Successful wooing spree.
And this also, by the way, Devdatta, comes at a time when the French economy is not doing well, and the people inside France are not happy with Emmanuel Macron. Okay, but he creates this outer illusion of being in control, and frankly, that also works, because the proof of the pudding lies in the eating.
Proof. So, Swasti, from France back to Trump.
How can we do a GPS without Trump?
Ever. I don't think that's going to happen ever, but yes, Trump is back again. Okay. And our subscriber, Swarnaditya Roy 2602 has a question where he asks, what do you think is the reason which is making Trump so anti-India? And he also has a question on the implication of a crypto deal between the WLF and the Pakistan Crypto Council, and what does it mean for India?
See, very quickly, anti-India, I'm not sure if Trump has become anti-India, but Trump certainly has kind of de-prioritized India. I mean, we are no longer their aankhon ka tara for some reason, okay, that we imagined that we would be once Donald Trump comes, okay, because if you go by how we were weaving the narrative when Donald Trump was becoming president, aisa lag raha tha ki wo India ka president banne ja raha hai, itne khush the log. But anyway, so coming back and to more serious part of the discussion, I would say that yes, he has de-prioritized, and there are certain reasons for it. One does see I think by and large the convergence will remain. I have also argued that in the longer run, of course, India and America remain very important strategic partners, and also their strategic partnership is very instrumental to maintaining stability in the world, because now this is in terms of evolving tensions in the Indo-Pacific, so on and so forth. But yes, for now there are certain reasons why people are saying it, and I think we cannot discount them. So, for example, let's start home. I mean, US has not been able to appoint another ambassador. So the
Right.
post is lying vacant, right? After Eric Garcetti is gone, there has been no one. And Eric Garcetti was Biden's man. And Trump has not been able to find anyone. Similarly, if you remember, the Paul Kapoor, who was supposed to be nominated as the Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs, was nominated, but then he was not ever confirmed. And of course,
Right.
he's an India specialist. So those kind of things actually do tell that maybe India is not really on Trump's priority.
Priority list.
Now, similarly, under Trump and under all this Doge, obsession, what they have done is that they have actually reduced the staff of the National Security Council from 300 to just 50.
Right.
And many of those that are now removed are actually experts on South Asia, Southern Asia, Indo-Pacific, India. So this also shows that this cutting down because of Doge and because of whatever Donald Trump wanted to. I mean, it's a statement he wants to make it. He wants to prove a
Absolutely.
point. He wants to check a box. But in the midst of all of that, what he's landed up doing is that from 300 to 50, and many of those that were actually specialists on South Asia, many of them that were specialists on India, on Pakistan, India, on Indo-Pacific, have actually been shown the door. So these are reasons where one can argue that perhaps it's deprioritized. Similarly, I think if I'm sure everybody noticed how Donald Trump went out of his way to announce again and again to Tim Cook not to invest in India and not to make
Right.
iPhones in India. And in fact, he said that if he were to do it, then he's going to put 25% tariff.
Tariff
So
on you.
I mean, this is something which obviously doesn't go down well, because it's one thing to say that overall trade with India is something and he would want to reduce the trade deficit that US has. And it's another thing to actually come in the way of the growth story that India, revels in, especially. So I think this has definitely not gone down well. And this is something which most people have taken note of. And this comes right in the aftermath of him claiming that he's the one who mediated the ceasefire, quote unquote, which is not technically a ceasefire, but nonetheless, between India and Pakistan. He has also gone on record, and not just him, his I think many within his cabinet have also administration have also gone on record saying that they kind of reduce those tensions by luring both India and Pakistan into
Towards
trade
trade.
deals, and which is something that India has consistently refuted. But what I'm saying is that from Trump's perspective, then of course this is a logical question. Then maybe he's not really thinking about India in the way that we expected. And I think there's one thing that is going to now get come into effect from 2026 January, which is also going to impact our relations, which is that he has actually put a 3.5% excise tax on outward remittances. And why this is relevant for India is that US is one of the partners from where we earn a lot of remittances. In fact,
Right.
US is the one of the top four partners from where we earn remittances, and remittances are extremely important for India, because in the year 2024, financial year 23-24, India earned $125 billion from remittances
Remittances.
and only $75 billion from FDI. So with this kind of a putting tax on remittances, on outward remittances, obviously it is coming to India, and this is going to be again something which is a little bitter for us. And I'm sure you keep hearing about how he's put restrictions on getting more Indian students, and how he's sort of so by and large the the tone and tenor of Trump administration's policies towards India, I mean, it's not something that we expected. In fact, it's much worse than what we expected. And I just gave you
Right.
certain parameters. Of course, there are more, but then, how much can we talk in just 5 minutes? So we can do a separate actually episode on that. But indeed, this is something that, and I haven't even come to Quad. I mean, one doesn't know. I have myself argued that Donald Trump, perhaps under Donald Trump, Quad is going to develop more
Stronger.
teeth. Okay, especially on the question of China. And all that argument is coming from the assumption that Donald Trump's long-term approach towards China will be that of continuity, which is that China is going to is going to remain a priority for United States to counter. But so far, all he has done, he has gone after Harvard, he has gone
Right.
after Apple, he has gone after, he's been in a hurry to broker ceasefires, jump from one conflict to another,
Another.
oversimplifying conflicts. He has always also been in a hurry to levy tariffs, and also extremely irrational tariffs. In fact, only yesterday, some federal court, a special court on US trade,
Yes.
actually said that this is unlawful.
Beyond his constitutional
Yeah,
ability.
because the emergency provisions that he invoked were completely inconsonant with the real issue
Absolutely.
at hand. So what I'm saying is that Donald Trump has been doing all of these things, and none of these things actually measure up in the larger American strategy. And a lot of people now argue that this is the weakest that America has ever been
Ben.
globally. So we will keep seeing how this unfolds. But with respect to India, I'll just say the same point that I started with, and conclude, which is that maybe not anti-India so much, but really very tone deaf to India, and
Deprioritized.
has kind of deprioritized India. Yeah, and no Tulsi Gabbard is helping, no Kash Patel is helping. I don't know where these guys are, by the way. So when they came, we were very happy, weren't we? I mean, at least we as in common Indians were very happy.
Indians,
Yeah.
yeah. And firstly, what about Pakistan then? The whole deal with Trump and WLF and Pakistan's growing focus on crypto.
Okay, so well, see, the first thing is that if you really want to have like a serious discussion on it, I don't think it can be covered in 2 minutes. But then
Right.
to your question directly, do we need to worry and things like that? I think we're reading too much into the situation, right? I mean, we there's probably, in my opinion, there's nothing for India to like really read into, as if Pakistan has suddenly become some kind of a favored nation again for America just because it has gotten into this. So that's the short answer. But I think we would probably need to understand more layers of it, and that really cannot be done in 2 minutes. Yeah.
Right. So, Swasti, moving on from US towards our neighbors, and of course, there's a question on Bangladesh as always, and this is from our subscriber Balraj Parmar, who is asking that do you think India's relationship with Bangladesh will improve if elections are held
Hmm.
and Khaleda Zia's BNP comes to power compared to how they are under the Yunus regime right now?
Hmm.
Or will India continue to suffer for putting too many eggs in the basket of Sheikh Hasina?
Well,
Uh,
India has already suffered because of putting most of its eggs in Sheikh Hasina basket, and that's a mistake. It's a blunder. We should stop doing that. Playing into this domestic politics of anti-India, pro-India. We should be engaging all stakeholders, especially if they're relevant stakeholders. To your question, very quickly, I can see where this is coming from, because Tariq Rahman
right.
has given some very pro-India statements, and he has actually. I'm not sure if he really intends those statements to be pro-India. If he really intends to be pro-India, or is he only saying that because he wants to counter Yunus, because
Right
Yunus
now.
has been very openly anti-India in
Anti-India.
terms of his statements, etc. So we will have to just see whether this is going to go beyond the face value or anything. But yes, he has said, and I think what has made his statements famous is he said that not Delhi, not Pindi, but Bangladesh first. So I think abhi fashionable ho gaya kehna India first, America first, Bangladesh first. Let's see when he comes what really happens. But I don't think India should be reading too much into this, because there are certain structural factors sometimes that are driving and fueling, these geopolitical situations, and not just these statements. Because if you look at Bangladesh, and especially considering the fact that China has a stake and interest there, and Bangladesh also wants to keep the Chinese happy, wants to keep, and Bangladesh is playing all sides. So
Yeah.
I think India should wait and watch. But yes, as far as engaging is concerned, I would say that India should definitely engage, because this is also a way of sort of, promoting the idea that India is there to speak to anybody and everybody that is a legally elected representative, A,
Absolutely.
B, and all kinds of relevant stakeholders. That's exactly what we are doing with Taliban. That's exactly we should be doing with Bangladesh. That's exactly what we should be doing in Maldives, Sri Lanka. In fact, all overall, in the neighborhood, instead of getting into this pro-India and anti-India factions, because then we become a victim to their internal politics. But
Right.
I wouldn't read too much there, because I don't think that Bangladesh continues to be a third front, and a difficult third front for us, even if not in terms of a conventional war, but in terms of destabilization. So
Right. And Swasti, before we end this segment and this episode, one last question on following up on all of that what we discussed, and this is by Rima G24, who is asking that could then reaching out to the Bangladesh Army Chief Wakaruzzaman serve as a strategic move for India to mend or strengthen its ties with Bangladesh?
well, reaching out in terms of what? In terms of strategic communication, of course, we should be backing Zaman's calls for quick elections. Okay, so I think that is where we converge. Doesn't mean to say that we should be again reading too much. So yes, this is how foreign policy is done, that you try to expand your convergences and minimize your divergences. Bangladesh, we cannot wish Bangladesh away, it's going to be here. So we, like I said, that in that respect we should be supporting his call for holding quick elections, early elections. Terms of expanding our convergences is concerned, I think it makes all the sense for India to back Zaman's statements and supporting the call for early elections in Bangladesh, because the caretaker government is not meant to last forever, of course.
Right. And with that, Swasti, we come to an end of this episode. Before we end, once again, I would like to remind you that please remember to send your questions on the link that we post on our social medias.
Devdatta will only see those questions, because if you keep sending me on X and on LinkedIn and here and there, actually we tend to lose them, and we want to actually engage all these questions. That's our
Right.
effort. So please click on the link and send on the space that you then see.
Absolutely, because these are really good questions, and we would like to take as many subscriber questions as we can, because this entire segment is based on that. On that note, thank you so much for watching this episode. We will see you for another fresh new episode next week.